Hello there. In this video we will implement the logic to keep track of the player's scores, and we'll also add a GUI to display it. We'll start by adding the font resource to the project. Make sure you download the assets, and the link will be in the description below. We'll start by creating a directory under the assets folder here. We're gonna call it fonts. And now once you've downloaded the font, just all we need to do, like with the other assets, is to drag and drop it. Just like that. Now, to use the font, we need to create an actual font resource in Defold. We're going to leave a link in the description below, as always, to the official documentation, which, again, it's awesome. So have a look. We're going to create the font resource in the main folder. So we're going to create an asset folder here first. Then we're just going to create the font right here. So we're just going ahead to create new font. And we're going to call it score underscore font. Okay, so it has some properties. First, we need to choose which font we're going to be using. So this is the default one. And we're just going to go ahead and, oops, no, not that. We're going to select the one we just added. Perfect. And we're going to be using a size of 60. We're just going to be using this one, but feel free to change it and play around with it. Next, we'll create and then add the GUI components. Under the main folder, we'll create a GUI file called main and a GUI script called main GUI. So let's go ahead and do that. So under the main folder, we'll create a GUI. We're just going to call it main, as we said. And there we go. We're going to go through this in a bit. Let's go ahead and add the script. So GUI script, we're going to call it main underscore GUI. Again, we're going to leave a link in the description below so you can read more about GUIs, but we're going to be discussing certain things as we go along. Okay, we'll start by configuring the GUI. So let's go ahead and open that up. First things first, we're going to have to add the font. So if you see, we need to add either textures and fonts we're going to be using. In our case, we're only going to be using fonts. Let's go ahead and start with that. So add font. And there we go, the score font. Once we have this, we can start using it. So to use it, we're going to be creating text nodes. So you have different kinds of nodes you can add. The box and text are usually the ones, the most common ones. For now, we'll be using text. So let's go ahead and create that. So this one, we're going to be using it for the left score. So for the left player, let's call it left underscore score. We're going to choose the font. As you can see, it has no font yet. So we need to specify it. It's the score font, and there we go, looks lovely. Let's set the text to 0. It's not really needed, but it's just so we can see. It's for a preview. And last, all we need to set is the position. So about like, see, yeah, 200 seems okay. And let's see about like 580 in the X position, the Y position, 580. Yep, I think that looks great. Again, feel free to play around with it. Let's go ahead and do the same for the right one. So you can probably just copy and paste. Might be a bit quicker. Call it right score. And all we need to change is the X. So let's see, 1080, because that's total width minus 200. So they have basically the same offsets on the sides here and here. And yeah, we're good to go. We're gonna see how we can add this to the main collection in a bit. Next, we're gonna have to add some logic to the main script, the main GUI script. So let's go here, and as usual, we're gonna get rid of the boilerplate. In this script, all we'll need is the on message. So let's go ahead and delete everything else. We won't even need the on init. So yeah, this looks great for us to start with. Okay, we'll start by creating some constants. So we'll need some messages, right, to update the scores. And remember, all the logic is gonna be in the controller. This GUI script it's mainly to display things, so we can dynamically change the certain objects or components. In our case, we want to be changing the text nodes. Whenever one of the players scores, we want to be updating the score. So we're going to be receiving one message for each player. So let's go ahead and create a local constant here. We'll call it sort of like a command. So update left score. There we go. We're going to call it the same, just lowercase. And we're just going to be doing the same for the right one. So let's go ahead and do that. So update right. There we go. Next, as usual with message handling, we need to check whether the incoming message ID is the one we're expecting. So let's start by checking the left one. So if message ID is the update left score, then just at the end here. Okay, so what do we want to do? Before we go ahead and let's add the other if branch to make sure we're checking both messages, right? So it's just right here. Okay, there we go. So as we said, we want to be updating the score. So for this, what we're gonna do is we'll create because both are basically the same logic, it's just different nodes. So let's go ahead and create a helper function that's gonna do what we want. So let's create a local function here. We're gonna call it update score, right? So we'll need an ID, and this is the node ID, basically the name we gave to the node. So we need that to know which node we're updating. And then a score, which is just gonna be the text that we're gonna be setting in the text node, right? Okay, first we need to grab the node. So let's go ahead and create a node. And the way we do that is with the GUI. So GUI.getNode is gonna give us what we need. As we see, it receives an ID, which we can pass. This will give us the node we're trying to update, right? The first thing, the easiest thing is we're gonna need to set the text, right? So GUI has a function or a method called setText. As we can see, it receives the node, which we already have, and a text, which in our case is the score. But just so it looks prettier, we're gonna add like an animation. Every time we score, we want it to blink. So what we're gonna be doing is, looks a bit weird, but even I'm not exactly familiar why this is like this, but this is how you go about doing it. So first, you have the node, which is already called node, so that's perfect. The property in this case is we're going to be changing the color. The W is the alpha, let's say, of the color, right? So because we want to basically to disappear for a bit, we want to take this to a 0. The ising will be using, oops, in lowercase, we're going to be using a linear, so nothing fancy. We just want to be blinking. For duration 0.0, and we're actually gonna be using a different signature. So this is the delay. We want the animation to start right away, so we're gonna set a 0. Next is the completion function, which is a callback we can provide so we can execute some logic right after the animation is done. We don't really need that, so let's make sure we are setting it to nil. And lastly, this is the sort of the animation playback we want to be doing. In our case, we want to be doing a once ping pong. So what this will do is this animation is going to take the alpha to 0 and then back to 1 during the duration we specified, which is half a second. So this is going to give us a really nice subtle blinking animation every time the player scores. It's just to give some more visual feedback to the player, right? It's fairly simple and it looks nicer than having nothing. Again, feel free to play around with it and see what really works for you. We're gonna add the link again to the description below if you want to read further about animations in the GUI. So we've got a function, we're gonna test it in a bit. For now, we have to use it, right? We just created it. So update score. In this case, we called it left underscore score. Is the name of the text node, and then we will get the score through the message table or the message object here, which means that from the game controller, from the main controller script, we need to specify this, right? So we just need to remember that once we go there, but this is a good way to know what we need. Yeah, and we'll just do the same for the right. So right score, and then we'll just call it right score in the message as well. Right, we're done with the GUI. Now, what we need to do is now actually send these messages from the main controller, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's start by adding the messages to the main controller script, right? We're gonna be sending them. So let's make sure we have them here as well. Once you learn about modules, you can have all the constants in a script and then you can just import them, which would probably be a lot better than just copying and pasting them everywhere. But for such a small game, we can get away with things like this. Once you start working on your own game, please create constants in a single place, so you don't have to be copying and pasting them, because if we update it here, then we might forget to update it somewhere else in the game, and that might break a few things. So next, we'll initialize this course to 0. So remember, well, we can call it whatever we want, but for consistency, we're going to be using it as left score and right score in the GUI. So let's do the same here. We'll create one for the right and one for the left. Next, when we get the ball out of bounds message right here, we need to check which bounds it's out of, right? At the moment, we don't really know who scored, so we need to make a small change here. The one that sends this message is the ball script, so let's go ahead and whenever we post the message to the main controller, we are going to add, let's have a look, yes, here. We'll add a message object or table here, and we're going to specify the x-axis. With the x-axis, we can determine which side the ball is, and that way we know who scores. So what we want is to use the next position dot x as the x there. Okay, back in the handling of the out of bounds message. So before we spawn a new ball, let's check which side of the screen the ball is. So we're going to be using the new x variable we have inside the message. So message, if message.x, so if it's greater than the game width that we already have here, so if it's on the second half, then we know that the left player scored. So this means that it's on the right side of the screen, which means that the left player has scored. It can be a bit confusing at first, but that's how it goes, right? So what we want, first of all, we know the left player has scored, so let's increase that by 1. And here it's an equal, it's not a sum. From here is where we would post the message, right? So we know that whenever the player scores, any player, we need to post to the message to the GUI. So let's go ahead and do that. If you remember, this would be game object hashtag component. So the game object, we call it main. Sorry, GUI. I'm getting all confused here. Yeah. So in any case, we haven't added it here yet. So let's do that now. In the collection, so we need a game object for the GUI. So we call this GUI. So we know what it is, and then we add a component file, and this is where we choose the GUI. And as you can see, now we can see the text notes, right? We can see the score. So this is how you add GUIs to a collection. And again, we can see the URL here. We can just paste it, or we can just use it as it is. I have it right here. So let's just GUI hashtag main is the right URL. The left player has scored, so let's send the left message. And remember, we depend on the GUI depends on the score. We need to send the score. So there we go. That should do it. Obviously, we're missing the right player, so we want equality, right, for these players. So let's go ahead and do the same and replace left with right, basically. So feel free to pause and do it yourself, or just bear with me. There we go. This should be it, really. So it was quite simple to do this, which is amazing. A testament to how simple default is. So let's see. Right. So always forget, we haven't added the script to the GUI, right? So we did all these things, and we really haven't added the script to the GUI. So how we do that? We need to link them. So if we go to the GUI object here, you can see there's like a script. So this doesn't happen to you. Be better than me and do this straight after you create certain things. So let's choose a script, and okay, let's see if I'm actually, yes, there we go. It seems like I sort of know what I'm doing. So as you can see, the animation is quite nice. Fairly simple, right? Very rudimentary, but you know, it gets us where we need to be. It's working now. Awesome. Please leave a comment if you have any feedback. We're always trying to improve. After all, these tutorials are for you, so please let us know what you like, what you don't like as well, and we'll try to make it better and better. And please leave a like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. This will really help the channel as we're just getting started. Okay, see you in the next one.